I am Stephanie, and if anyone asked me what has shaped the person I am today, I would not hesitate to say my childhood. A childhood sweetened with little dreams, but also full of cracks no one else could see. Those cracks didn't show on the walls of our home, nor in the smiling family portraits that hung in the living room. They lived in my memories of unfairness, of the way my parents raised two children under the same roof, but set us on entirely different paths. From a very young age, I learned how to save. While the neighborhood kids eagerly spent their New Year's money on toys, dolls, and candy, I treasured every coin and tucked it into a pink porcelain piggy bank my mother gave me for my 7th birthday. Each time a coin clinked against the ceramic, I smiled, imagining the day I would finally buy a seafoam green bicycle, the reward for my patience. Michael, my younger brother, was the complete opposite. 2 years younger than me, it seemed that from the moment he was born, Michael believed the world owed him something. While I carefully saved my coins, Michael relied on his innocent smile and big brown eyes to beg, whine, and demand until he got his way. If charm didn't work, he would cry, throw a tantrum, and eventually someone would give in. I still remember one sweltering summer afternoon. I was 12, and my piggy bank was nearly full. Just a few more weeks, and I'd have enough for my dream bike. But when I came home from school, I found my pink piggy shattered on the bedroom floor, coins scattered like fallen stars. The savings of an entire year gone. And there was Michael, sitting on the edge of the bed, clutching a brand new comic book, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "Michael, why did you do this?" I cried, my voice trembling, my hand pointing to the broken pieces. He shrugged, calm as if it meant nothing. "I wanted to buy comics. Mom said you'd forgive me." And indeed, Mom had said exactly that. She walked in, saw the scene, and I thought just this once, Michael would be punished. But no. She only sighed, patted his head, and turned to me with a gentle admonishment. "Stephanie, you need to be patient with your brother. He's still young, still learning. Don't be too hard on him." It was the same refrain I heard my entire childhood. You must be patient with your brother. A phrase that sounded kind on the surface, but felt like a sentence handed down again and again, pressing heavier on my heart each time. My father was no different. To him, Michael was always the charming little boy, mischievous but harmless. He would pat my shoulder and say, "Sweetheart, one day you'll understand. Your brother is just a little impulsive. You're the older one, you have to yield." So instead of being recognized for my efforts, I was forced to become the grown-up far too early. While Michael was sheltered and excused for every mistake, I was expected to sacrifice, to shoulder the responsibility. The memory of that bicycle became a wound that never healed. I never bought it. The money vanished along with my tears that day. But more than that, it planted a bitter lesson: if I didn't protect myself, no one else would. As the years passed, the gap in how my parents treated us only widened. I was expected to do the chores, keep my grades perfect, set an example. Michael, on the other hand, no matter how lazy, no matter what he broke, only had to smile, and forgiveness was his. Once I was at my desk doing homework when I heard a crash in the living room. Rushing out, I found Michael tossing a ball around the shards of my mother's favorite vase glittering on the carpet. My heart sank. Surely this time he'd be scolded. But when our parents came home, Michael pouted, stammered a few words, then melted into Mom's embrace. And once again, I heard the familiar words, "Stephanie, don't be mad at him. He's just a child." It was then I began to understand, in this family, justice didn't exist. Fairness was a foreign concept. I learned to swallow my tears, to silently gather strength for myself. If Michael was being taught that the world would always forgive him, I was being taught that the world would only grow harsher. and I had to be ready to face it alone. During my teenage years, I started taking odd jobs babysitting, gardening, cleaning for neighbors to earn my own money for books and clothes. I stopped believing in fairness under our roof. I believed only in myself. Meanwhile, Michael remained the pampered child. No part-time jobs, no pressure over grades. Every time he stumbled, our parents rushed in to fix things. And so the distance between us grew wider and wider, like two parallel lines destined never to meet. At night, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering, would there ever come a day when my parents saw the value of my efforts? Would they ever stop excusing Michael with "he's still young"? But the answer was always silence. I grew up in that silence, in a hunger for recognition that was never fulfilled. And it was that very injustice that forged me in the harshest of ways into someone resilient and independent. That became the foundation for everything that came after my career, my success, and the scars I carry inside. If childhood is a doorway, then mine opened into a room filled with shadows. But in that darkness, I learned how to light my own flame. As time passed, my childhood slipped away, giving way to the years of adulthood, and with it, the moment when Michael's path and mine split into two entirely different directions. I still remember the day I left our old house for college. My heart was a mix of excitement and anxiety. I had chosen finance, a field many people found dry and unappealing, but to me, it was a doorway to freedom. I swore to myself that I would never repeat my family's cycle of financial chaos, borrowing, depending on others, and blaming circumstances. At school, I wasn't the kind of student who could splurge on parties or trendy clothes. I worked 2 jobs at once during the day in the university's financial aid office and at night as a barista at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my dorm. Every paycheck, no matter how small, I meticulously recorded and divided into categories: tuition, rent, living expenses, and a small portion I sent home to my parents. Every time Mom called to say she had bought Dad's medication thanks to the money I sent, I felt all my sacrifices were worth it. Meanwhile, Michael chose a very different road. He enrolled at the local community college, but only lasted a single semester. His reasons kept changing. The environment isn't right. The professors don't inspire me. The program is boring. But the truth was, Michael never wanted to sit still in a classroom. While I spent sleepless nights preparing for my macroeconomics exam, Michael spent his nights hanging out with friends, posting pictures online, posing next to sports cars he didn't own. And my parents, as always, made excuses. Michael is just finding his own path. Boys need time to explore. Explore. That was their favorite word. But in reality, what they called exploring was laziness, an escape from responsibility. Michael changed jobs like changing clothes waiter at an upscale Italian restaurant, salesman at a phone shop, insurance marketing rep. None lasted more than 3 months. Each ended with excuses. The boss didn't understand me. My co-workers were jealous I was meant for something bigger. While I lived crammed into a tiny apartment with 2 classmates eating instant noodles to save money, Michael stayed at home in the room my parents paid for gaming until dawn. By the time I graduated with honors and landed a job at a respected financial firm in Chicago, Michael was still drowning in credit card debt that my parents kept bailing him out of. My early working years were painfully strict. My starting salary was modest, but I split rent with 2 coworkers to save. I opened a savings account, built an emergency fund, and most importantly, set up automatic transfers so my parents would never have to worry about their monthly medical bills. For me, that wasn't just duty, it was peace of mind. Michael, on the other hand, entered his first real financial crisis. He borrowed money to open a creative coffee shop, hoping it would become an artistic hangout for young people. Within 3 months, it shut down, leaving a mountain of debt. And as always, my parents turned to me. "Stephanie, could you help your brother just this once?" I froze when I heard it. just once meant over $10,000, the equivalent of a year's worth of skipped meals and sleepless nights. I refused, but my parents still drained their retirement savings to pay off Michael's debt. And so the cycle repeated. Michael launched new projects with excitement, only to watch them collapse in failure. Meanwhile, I climbed the career ladder: analyst, then advisor, then manager, building a reputation with clients and earning steady promotions. Michael, now 30, was still drifting, living off the safety net of others. Some nights I sat in my new condo, a small but hard-earned home, after nearly 10 years of relentless work, staring out the window, asking myself, how did we turn out so different? Same parents, same house, yet two completely different lives. I grew up under discipline and the fear of being abandoned. Michael grew up under unconditional indulgence. One visit home, Mom clasped my hand and whispered, her voice breaking, "Sweetheart, I know you've sacrificed so much, but Michael isn't as strong as you. He needs support." Her words left me paralyzed. Was it because I was strong that I was left to fend for myself? In this family, was love reserved only for the weak? Michael's debts continued piling up. Maxed out credit cards, borrowing from friends, pawning the expensive gifts our parents had bought him. And each time I became the target again. "You're the older sister. It's your responsibility." While I spent my youth carrying everyone else's weight, Michael became an endless burden. Looking back, I can see clearly our two paths were set long ago. One child forced to grow up too soon to learn independence to fight against harshness. Another coddled, forgiven for everything, and molded into someone who never took responsibility. And that divide over time became more than just different lives. It became the spark that ignited the tragedies that followed. I still remember that afternoon when I opened my phone and saw a notification from Instagram. Michael had tagged me in a post. I frowned. Normally, I ignored my brother's flashy shows on social media. But the golden letters and glittering picture made me freeze. "She said yes!" The caption screamed in bold, followed by a flood of red heart emojis. Below was a close-up of a diamond ring sparkling on the slender finger of a woman. I was stunned. My brother, engaged, since when, to whom? And why was I the sister who had carried this family on my back, finding out through a social media post? I immediately called Mom. "Did you know Michael is getting married?" My voice trembled, laced with both shock and anger. On the other end, her tone was disturbingly calm, almost cold. "Oh, he mentioned he was seeing someone." But I was surprised, too, when I saw the post. I let the phone drop from my hand, feeling as though I had just been pushed to the sidelines of my own family story. Weeks later, I attended Michael and Brittany's engagement party. From the moment I stepped into the hall, I was overwhelmed. Chandeliers dripped with crystal, banquet tables draped in immaculate white lace, each plate adorned with a printed menu on heavy cardstock. In the corner, a luxurious bar displayed imported liquor, while a live band played soft French love songs. I stood frozen for a moment, asking myself, how on earth could Michael afford all this? But of course, the answer was obvious: he couldn't. Brittany appeared in a pure white jumpsuit, her golden curls cascading like something out of a fashion magazine. I overheard a guest whisper, "That outfit must have cost a few $1,000s. I sighed silently, comparing it to the money I sent home each month to cover my parents' medication. The contrast was bitter. Michael approached me beaming. "What do you think? Amazing, right? Brittany has exquisite taste. The wedding will be even grander." I forced a polite nod, but inside unease began to stir. In the days that followed, my unease crystallized into dread. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, photos of luxury resorts in Cabo floral arrangement quotes, tasting menus from 5-star restaurants. At first, they were framed as ideas, but soon the tone shifted. "Stephanie, what do you think about this $15,000 photography package? I already reserved the church. You'll help cover the deposit, right? Mom and Dad deserve to see their only son get married in style." don't you think, sis? Brittany even sent me Excel spreadsheets with expense breakdowns, highlighting entire sections labeled Stephanie's contribution. It was as if my financial responsibility was already a foregone conclusion. I tried to stay calm to dodge their hints, but the tension exploded over a family dinner. That evening, Mom cooked Michael's favorite lasagna. We all sat around the table, the warm glow of home filling the air. I had just taken a bite when Michael abruptly set down his fork and knife, his voice hard. We need to be direct. Stephanie, I don't understand why you're being so selfish. You have a career, money, a perfect boyfriend. All I want is one big day. Why won't you help me? His words cut through me like a knife. My mouth fell open, but before I could respond, Brittany chimed in, her tone sweet but edged with accusation. We're not asking for too much. Just a dream wedding, something everyone deserves. Stephanie, don't you love your brother? Mom placed her trembling hand on the table. Sweetheart, maybe you should reconsider. After all, Michael only gets married once. I went numb. The three of them, Michael, Brittany, and my mother, stood united while I sat isolated on the other side of the line. I looked at my father silently begging for balance, but he only lowered his head silent. Summoning all my composure, I spoke in a hoarse voice. Michael, I've worked tirelessly for everything I have today. I still send money home every month for Mom and Dad. But a $75,000 wedding, I can't, and I won't pay for that. Michael slammed his hand against the table, the plates rattling. You always act like you're the noble one, the selfless one. But the truth is, you're just stingy and cold. You want this family to be humiliated in front of everyone, don't you? I choked back tears, pushed my chair away, and rushed outside. The cold wind slapped my face, but I still felt suffocated, like I was being strangled. What had I done wrong? Why was I the one who carried the family's burdens, now the one on trial? That night, I sat alone in my apartment, tears streaming endlessly. In my despair, I called Daniel. He came immediately carrying a box of chocolate ice cream and the steady strength of his arms. You did the right thing, Stephanie, he whispered. No one has the right to force you to pay for a wedding they can't afford. You've already sacrificed enough. I leaned against his shoulder, letting his warmth seep into me. But deep inside, a lingering fear gnawed at me. If they don't stop, how far will they go? After that tense family dinner, I tried to avoid any contact with Michael. In the days that followed, I buried myself in work at the financial firm, meeting clients, organizing workshops, as if keeping busy could hide the pain gnawing inside me. But even while staring at spreadsheets and glowing screens somewhere in the back of my mind, Michael's voice still echoed. You're selfish, stingy. You don't care about family. I hated that feeling, the feeling of being painted as a traitor, simply because I refused to bankroll an extravagant wedding. I had done so much, carried so much, and yet in their eyes, it meant nothing. Then one evening, just as I was about to go to bed, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. Sis, I'm sorry. I overreacted at dinner. I know money is a sensitive subject. I promise no talk about the wedding this time. I just want to invite you to a small birthday dinner. Just us like siblings, no pressure. I read it again and again, my heart pounding. Michael, apologizing, that was almost unheard of. My brother had lived his whole life assuming his mistakes would always be forgiven. He had never truly admitted fault, never bowed his head to anyone. Could this be a good sign? Had Michael finally reached his limit and wanted to mend things? I wanted to believe. I really did. But then the next messages came, and a cold suspicion surged through me. Make sure to dress nicely. It's a special occasion. Oh, and bring your ID and some financial documents if you have them. I've got a little surprise for you. I froze. Financial documents. A surprise. What kind of birthday dinner required ID and financial papers? Warning bells went off in my head. I thought back to all the times Michael had borrowed money using the family as leverage. I remembered the sharp gleam in Brittany's eyes when she sent me wedding invoices as if I were the family's personal ATM. I remembered my parents' hesitant pleas. Help your brother just this once. Just this time. No, I couldn't walk into this naively. I knew whatever this was, it wasn't just a birthday dinner. It was a setup. I immediately told Daniel. His usually gentle brow furrowed, his voice firm. I don't believe Michael has suddenly changed. This feels like a trap. You cannot go alone. I sighed. But if I refuse, they'll say I'm heartless, that I don't want to make peace. Daniel squeezed my hand. Then go, but we'll prepare. We started planning. Daniel suggested he come with me, but not at first. Instead, he'd arrive at the restaurant ahead of time, sit at the bar nearby, and keep watch. If anything seemed off, he'd step in immediately. I also called Thomas, my trusted lawyer. After listening quietly to my story, he finally said, Stephanie, I've handled many family disputes. Believe me, what your brother is doing isn't just about asking for money. There may very well be a legal document involved. You need to be extremely cautious. His words made my neck prickle cold. A legal document, I pictured, contracts, binding papers, things that could trap me for life if I signed in haste. Thomas continued, record the entire meeting. Every unusual word, every threat, documented all. And I'll be on standby. One call, and I'll come immediately. The night before the supposed birthday dinner, I barely slept. I lay in my quiet apartment, staring at the ceiling, my heartbeat thundering. A part of me wanted to believe Michael truly felt remorse, but another part screamed it was all an act. I turned from side to side, asking myself, what if my brother has sunk so low he's willing to use the law to seize my money? What if my parents are complicit? The next morning, I dressed with care. A modest, elegant dress, not flashy, but professional. I slipped my fully charged phone into my purse, along with a mini voice recorder and a blank notepad just in case. I shared my location with both Daniel and Thomas, setting scheduled check-ins. Driving to the restaurant, I felt like I was heading into battle, not a family gathering. The familiar street, usually warm with golden lights, now felt foreign and menacing. Every car horn, every passing shadow made my pulse quicken. When I pulled up to Giovanni's fine dining and private events, the glow of crystal chandeliers spilled through the windows. It was one of the city's most expensive venues. I drew a deep breath, clutched my purse tightly, and reminded myself, whatever happens, stay calm. The host greeted me with a professional smile. Good evening, Miss Walker. Your party is ready in the Venetian room. This way, please. My stomach twisted. Your party, not Michael's. My steps slowed as I approached the door. From inside, there was no laughter, no cheerful music, none of the usual sounds of a birthday celebration. Only silence, punctuated by low, serious murmurs. I slid my hand into my purse fingers, brushing the recorder's switch. Whatever awaited me beyond that door, I was ready. I stepped through the doors of the Venetian room, my heart pounding like a war drum. Light from the crystal chandeliers spilled across a long table draped in white linen, the chairs arranged in a conference style, not a birthday celebration. There was no cake, no balloons, no candles or flowers. Instead, seated around the table were 4 men in tailored suits. Thick folders laid open before them. Mont Blanc pens poised neatly on the paper. I froze at the threshold, my throat dry. This wasn't a birthday. This was a trap. Michael rose to his feet, forcing a stiff smile, playing the role of a successful businessman. Stephanie, I'm so glad you came. Please sit down. My eyes swept the room. The seating had been arranged with intention, one chair set apart at the head of the table, directly opposite Michael and the 4 lawyers, exactly like the position of a defendant in a courtroom. I gave a bitter smile, walking slowly toward the chair. But instead of sitting, I remained standing, arms crossed firmly across my chest. "You said this was supposed to be a birthday dinner?" My voice was ice. Michael cleared his throat, his eyes flickering with both tension and anticipation. "We're family. You've always been the sensible one. That's why I think it's time we made something official." One of the lawyers slid a folder across the table toward me. On the cover in bold letters, Walker Family Support Fund, Power of Attorney Agreement. I flipped it open, skimming the clauses. My stomach dropped. The document granted Michael and a so-called family committee full authority over my assets, allowing them to withdraw funds from my accounts for essential family needs, housing, medical bills, education, weddings, and life milestones. There were no limits, no oversight, no protections for me. In reality, it was a financial death sentence binding me for life. I looked up at Michael. "So what you want to turn me into your personal banking?" He smiled, that same smile that had fooled our parents since childhood, and now he thought could fool me. "Not at all, Stephanie. This is about family. Once you read it carefully, you'll understand. Even your lawyer would agree. You know, in many states, there are filial responsibility laws. They could force you to support mom and dad anyway. You wouldn't want that, would you?" My chest tightened. He had already calculated how to corner me with the law. Before I could reply, I noticed something else. Brittany sat slightly behind him, her hands on the table, but restless. A phone hidden beneath a folded menu, the faint glow of the screen reflecting off her face. She was recording, pretending to type, but the camera was pointed right at me. My mind raced. What did they want from this video? A coerced promise? A fabricated agreement they could twist into leverage? Blackmail? Michael tapped his fingers on the table, his voice growing harder. "You've always claimed you love this family. Well, now's the time to prove it. If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to find another way. And you wouldn't want mom and dad dragged into court to testify against you, would you?" Every word landed like a knife, carving into me. I remembered the years I'd worked double shifts sending money home so our parents never had to worry. I remembered the freezing nights spent hunched over textbooks while Michael burned through cash on shallow indulgences. And now, here he was, standing in front of me, twisting my sacrifices into chains. I gave a sharp, humorless smile. "You've planned this well, Michael. The lawyers, the documents, even the secret video. But you forgot one thing." His eyes narrowed. "And what's that?" I met his gaze without flinching. My voice cut like steel. I'm not the 12-year-old girl crying over a shattered piggy bank anymore. I know how to protect myself now. For an instant, his face faltered. Brittany froze, her fingers hovering over the phone. The lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. The air in the room thickened, ready to ignite. I placed the file back on the table and slowly closed it. I will not sign. Not now. Not ever. Michael slammed his palm against the table, rattling the glass of water beside him. "Stephanie, you think you're smarter than the law? You'll regret this." His voice echoed across the Venetian room, raising the tension to its peak. I held myself steady, outwardly calm, though inside, my heart thundered, veins stretched to their limit. I knew this was only the opening act of a much longer war. The air inside the Venetian room was so thick, it felt like every breath weighed down my chest like a stone. Michael growled under his breath. The four attorneys sat in uneasy silence, and Brittany kept her head bowed, though the sharp gleam in her eyes, hidden behind the glow of her phone, never left me. I knew I was standing on the edge of both a legal and emotional battlefield. One moment of weakness, one careless signature, and my entire life would be shackled. Michael leaned forward, drumming his fingers hard against the table, his voice low and threatening. "You won't escape this, Stephanie. If you refuse, I'll find another way. You know filial responsibility laws, don't you? I could sue, and you'll end up paying anyway." I drew in a deep breath, ready to fire back, when click, the door behind me suddenly opened. Light from the hallway spilled in, and for the first time that night, I felt like I was seeing a beam of hope after endless darkness. Daniel walked in first tall and steady, his face tense, but his eyes unwavering. Right behind him was Thomas, my lawyer, my ally through years of storms. Michael shot up to his feet, startled, his face blanching. "What is this? Who let them in?" Daniel strode closer, resting a firm hand on the back of my chair, a silent anchor. Thomas said nothing at first. He set his leather briefcase on the table, clicked it open, and pulled out a small black recorder. With one push of a button, the room filled with familiar voices, Michael's voice, Brittany's, and the very threats spoken only minutes before. The recording played cold and damning. "You won't escape this. I'll find another way. Filial responsibility laws will force you to pay." Each word landed like a verdict, echoing back at Michael. Thomas finally lifted his head, his voice slow but firm. "Gentlemen, under Illinois law, recordings made to prove coercion or extortion are admissible, and this recording demonstrates those elements clearly." One of the lawyers across from me began to sweat, clearing his throat nervously. "Wait a moment. We were told this was a legitimate family planning meeting with mutual consent. If there's been a misunderstanding, we want no further involvement." Michael whipped his head toward them, barking, "Sit down. I hired you. You're here to back me up." Thomas raised an eyebrow, sliding a USB drive across the table. "And one more thing. We also have video evidence your fiancée, Ms. Brittany, deliberately recording this meeting to use against my client. Everything has been saved and backed up." Brittany's face drained of color. Her trembling hands shoved the phone into her bag. I only wanted to record this as a memory." She stammered, her usual confidence gone. Thomas slammed the folder shut, his words striking like a gavel. "This is not a memory. This is a scheme. And as Stephanie's legal counsel, I state clearly, anyone who continues to pressure her into signing this will face charges of extortion and harassment." The four lawyers began gathering their papers at once. The oldest among them turned to Michael, his voice dry and clipped. "We cannot proceed with this case. There are too many irregularities. We're withdrawing immediately." "No, you can't leave," Michael shouted, his face flushed, veins straining in his neck. But it was useless. One by one they rose and hurried out, leaving only Michael and Brittany behind, floundering. The room was filled with the sound of Michael's ragged breathing. He slammed his hand down, shattering a glass shard, scattering across the table. "You think you're so smart, Stephanie? With your lawyer, with your boyfriend standing guard? What do you want? Prove that I'm a failure." Daniel stepped forward, placing himself squarely between us. His voice was low, steady, and unshakable. "Michael, that's enough. Keep going, and you'll be in far more trouble than you can handle." Thomas's tone hardened as well. "What you just said can already be considered a threat. I suggest you stop before you destroy what's left of your case." I slowly rose from my chair. My heart still thundered, but I refused to let Michael see fear in my eyes. Meeting his gaze head on, I spoke clearly, my voice resolute. "I've endured enough, Michael. I will not sign. Not now. Not ever. And if you keep this up, I will let the law deal with you." Michael shook with rage, fists clenched, but beneath the fury his eyes betrayed something else, panic. For the first time, he had no ground left to stand on. Brittany tugged at his arm, her voice trembling. "Stop, Michael. Don't make this worse." Silence fell heavy for a long moment. I could feel his anger seething, but layered with it was helplessness. For the first time in his life, he had no leverage to use against me. Finally, he jerked his arm free, stepping back, his eyes burning with hatred. "You'll regret this, Stephanie. I swear it." Thomas immediately stepped forward, pointing a firm finger at him. "That is a direct threat. I advise you to weigh every word carefully. Everything has been documented." I drew a deep breath, retreating toward Daniel. His hand found mine, gripping firmly, passing me strength I hadn't known I needed. And in that moment, I realized I had won. Not just against Michael, but against the fear that had haunted me all these years. I left the Venetian room with my back straight, never once looking back. Behind me, the sound of chairs scraping Michael's furious shouts and Brittany's pleading faded into the distance. For the first time in years, I felt the swell of liberation. I had taken back control of my life. After leaving the Venetian room, I thought things would finally calm down. But in truth, the storm had only just begun. I knew Michael wouldn't give up so easily, and I knew my parents, the ones who had spent their lives indulging him, would inevitably be hurt when the truth surfaced. That evening, I sat with Daniel and Thomas in a small cafe. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the cappuccino in front of me, the cup long gone cold. Thomas sat in deep thought, removing his glasses, cleaning them slowly before finally speaking. "Stephanie, I fear Michael has been preparing this plan for quite some time. To gather 4 attorneys in one room, he must have told them a very different story. And I suspect your parents were persuaded by his lies as well." My chest tightened. I thought of my parents, of the lines etched deeper into their faces each year. How much had they believed? What had they imagined so much so that they could no longer see the truth staring them in the face? Daniel clasped my hand, his gaze gentle but unyielding. "It's time you face your parents directly. You can't let Michael keep twisting your sacrifices into his narrative." 2 days later, I returned to my parents' home. The old house I grew up in suddenly felt foreign. I walked into the living room and saw my father slouched in his armchair, eyes heavy with fatigue, while my mother turned her face away, unable to meet my gaze. The silence pressed down until it became suffocating. I was the one to break it. "Mom, Dad, I know what Michael told you, that I had agreed to set up a family support fund, and all that was left was the paperwork." My mother flinched, her hands trembling. My father sighed, his voice weary. "Michael said you agreed, but that the formalities needed to be finalized. He said you were just too busy to sign. We believed him. Maybe we wanted to believe him." The confession cut into me like a blade. Tears burned at my eyes, but my voice stayed firm. "No, I never agreed. It was all a lie. I've supported you both with medication, with essentials, but I will never allow Michael to control my life or my assets. If I signed that paper, it wouldn't just trap me, it would trap both of you as well." Mom broke down, covering her face with her hands. Dad closed his eyes, the wrinkles on his face deepening. I knew this moment was harder for them than any dinner table argument, because now they had to face the truth. The son they had defended all their lives had deceived them. I sat down and took my mother's frail, cold hand in mine. "I'm still here. I'll still help when you truly need it. But I cannot let my blood, sweat, and sacrifice become an endless wallet for Michael. If you love me, please understand this." Mom lifted her tear-streaked face, whispering through sobs. "We were wrong. We were too soft. Michael cried. Michael begged, and we gave in. But this time, he went too far." Dad nodded, his voice hoarse. "I never imagined he could deceive us like this. From now on, set your boundaries. We won't push you anymore." In that moment, a massive weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time, my parents admitted their mistakes. For the first time, I wasn't alone in this fight. But the shock didn't end there. A week later, I received an unexpected call from Brittany. Her voice was nothing like before, no trace of the prideful confidence she once wore, only trembling laced with regret. Stephanie. Can we meet? Just the two of us. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. When I arrived, Brittany was already seated, her face pale makeup smudged from tears. She clutched my hand like it was her lifeline. I broke off the engagement with Michael. I couldn't go through with it. There were too many things he hid from me. I stayed silent, waiting. Brittany exhaled shakily, her voice faltering. He told me you had agreed to pay for the wedding, that your family had a fund, and you were just stalling. I believed him. I bragged to my friends I planned a lavish celebration. And when it all crumbled, I realized I was just a pawn. The diamond ring he proposed with it wasn't even truly his. He went into debt to buy it just to look impressive. I looked at Brittany feeling equal parts pity and detachment. This was the same woman who once stood beside Michael against me, who secretly filmed me to trap me. But now, with the mask torn away, she was nothing more than another victim of his lies. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "I've lived in illusions too long, Stephanie. I want a real life, not one built on fake glamour. I know you must hate me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry." I drew in a deep breath. Brittany, I don't hate you, but I hope you've learned something. Never let someone like Michael manipulate your life again. She nodded, tears falling harder. Our conversation ended there, and I knew a new chapter was beginning. Michael had not only lost his chance to control me, but he had also lost the partner who once enabled his charade. That night, I sat alone by my apartment window, watching the city lights blur into the distance. My heart was heavy with pain for what I'd endured, yet lighter now that the truth was finally exposed. Michael had lost not just against me, but against the life he tried to fabricate with lies. My parents had opened their eyes. Brittany had left him. And I, for the first time in years, was free from the invisible chains of being the responsible older sister. I knew the journey wasn't over, but at least now I no longer had to fight it alone. After being exposed in front of our family, his fiancée and the lawyers Michael vanished from my sight for a while. I heard whispers he'd quit his job, moved into a small apartment with some friends, and was already drowning in debt again. I assumed he'd repeat the same old cycle, borrow, spend, then blame everyone else. But life, it seemed, was finally done indulging him. One rainy afternoon, after I had just wrapped up a client meeting and was sorting through files, my phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before picking up. His voice was hoarse, broken. "Sis, I need to see you." "Please." There was something in his tone I had never heard before. No arrogance, no defiance. Just a lost man begging for a lifeline. We met at a small cafe near the park, the same park where Dad used to take us when we were kids. I arrived early, sitting by the window as rain streaked down the glass, blurring the glow of the streetlights. Michael came late. The sight of him nearly broke me. Gone was the polished younger brother in designer suits from his engagement party. His shirt was wrinkled hair, unkempt eyes, bloodshot from sleepless nights. My heart tightened, part anger, part pity. He sat down, hands clasped, voice shaking. "Stephanie, I know I've done too many things wrong. I've lost everything. Brittany left me. My friends don't want me around. The debts are piling up. I have nothing left." I stayed silent, letting him speak. Perhaps for the first time in his life, Michael was truly facing the consequences. "I'm not asking you for money. I just need a chance. Please tell me what to do. I don't even know where to start anymore." I looked straight into his eyes. Beneath the despair, I saw something faint, an ember of light that had always been buried under arrogance and delusion. "Michael," I said slowly, "I'll help you, but only this way. I'll cover part of your therapy, financial counseling, and job training. But you must walk on your own. If you quit, I stop immediately. Do you accept that?" He lowered his head, shoulders trembling. After a long pause, he nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I accept. I'll try. Just believe in me one more time." The months that followed were grueling. Michael began therapy with Dr. Rivera, a psychologist who specialized in financial dependency and dysfunctional families. At first, Michael resisted with everything he had. In his first session, he shouted, "I don't have a problem. The problem is that no one understands me." But slowly, under Dr. Rivera's patient guidance, the walls began to crack. Michael was forced to confront the truth that he had lived his whole life in a cocoon of indulgence, never learning to take responsibility. Alongside therapy, I enrolled him in a basic IT certification program, an industry short on workers with a clear career path. When he first held the textbook, he muttered, "I don't understand any of this." I gently replied, "Everyone starts from zero." I did too. I won't lie, there were times I wanted to give up. Days when Michael skipped classes, made excuses, or avoided therapy, anger flared inside me. But I reminded myself I would only support effort, not failure. And to my surprise, after stumbling at the start, he actually began to change. He started showing up regularly, slowly grasping IT fundamentals. He even landed a small internship at a computer services company, not glamorous, but a steady beginning. At night, instead of gaming or wasting time online, Michael spent hours learning programming, debugging systems, or fixing laptops for friends. One evening, I stopped by his apartment and found him bent over a computer so focused he didn't notice me walk in. In that moment, I realized for the first time my brother was truly working. And then something I never expected happened. Michael met Lisa, a gentle, patient kindergarten teacher. They met at a church community event where Michael volunteered to help with technical setup. Lisa was nothing like Brittany. No flashy makeup, no designer clothes, just a warm smile and honest eyes. She told him plainly, "I don't date anyone who can't manage their finances. If you want to be with me, you need a clear budget and a savings goal." Michael froze, but instead of running, he quietly took notes. With Lisa, he didn't have to brag or pretend. Strangely enough, that honesty seemed to set him free. When Michael introduced her to me, I watched carefully. I saw the way she placed a calming hand on his shoulder. When he grew nervous, the way she encouraged him when he spoke about his IT work. And for the first time, I saw peace in my brother's eyes. Peace instead of fear or scheming. One late night, Michael called me. His voice trembled, not with desperation, but with emotion. "Sis, for the first time in my life, I feel like I can just be myself. Not pretending to be rich, not proving anything, just me. And Lisa accepts me that way." Tears rolled down my cheeks in silence. I knew then, after all the lies, failures, and heartbreaks, Michael had finally found his path. Standing by my apartment window, gazing at the distant city lights, I thought, maybe this is the turning point we both needed. Michael was no longer the reckless boy lost in illusions. I was no longer the sister forced to carry the family's weight alone. For the first time, we were both learning how to stand as independent people and slowly to rebuild the family bond that had once been broken. After everything that had happened, my life felt as though it had turned a page. Chicago was still the same city of long streets and glass towers glowing in the sunset, but I was no longer the woman who once strained under the weight of her family's demands. I had become someone else, stronger, clearer, and above all, deeply aware of the power of boundaries. At work, the resilience and hard-earned lessons I had carried became powerful tools. I began hosting a series of workshops called Preventing Financial Abuse in Families. At first, I thought it would be a small talk within my firm, but the demand grew far beyond what I expected. There were women in the audience with tears brimming in their eyes as I spoke of how one family member could manipulate an entire household through money. There were weathered, middle-aged men who admitted voice trembling. My brother used me financially for years. In moments like that, I realized my story was no longer just a personal tragedy. It had become a collective lesson. From pain, I had created value. In my personal life, my relationship with Daniel blossomed after the storms. He had been there in my weakest moments, facing my family's chaos by my side, offering his hand when I thought I might drown. One crisp autumn afternoon, as we strolled along Lake Michigan, red maple leaves tumbling around us, Daniel suddenly stopped. His eyes held a seriousness wrapped in love. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a vintage emerald ring, the deep green mirroring the shade of my own eyes. "Stephanie," he said, his voice steady but trembling slightly. "I've watched you fight, stand tall, and find yourself again. I don't want to just be the man beside you in the storms. I want to walk with you for the rest of the journey. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down my face, but for once, not from pain, from happiness. I nodded, laughing through the sobs. "I've waited for this moment all my life, Daniel." In that instant, I understood true love doesn't come from lavish gifts or extravagant parties. It comes from someone who takes your hand when you are at your weakest and chooses to stay. As for my parents, they began to change too. After Michael's deception was exposed, they went through their own period of painful reckoning. I once caught my mother crying alone, clutching our old family photo album. She whispered, "We were wrong. We loved the wrong way." And my father, a man of few words, finally confessed at dinner one night, "I thought I was protecting Michael. But in truth, I was hurting him. I'm sorry for letting you carry the burden so long." I was stunned. Never in my life had I heard my father apologize. But in that moment, I knew the change was real. They stopped rescuing Michael. No more secretly paying off debts, no more excuses of he's still young. Instead, they learned to step back to encourage without enabling. And surprisingly, that was exactly what allowed Michael to grow. He kept his IT job, moved into a shared apartment with 2 roommates, cut back his expenses, and began saving. Each time he visited our parents, he came with stories, fixing a computer, troubleshooting a network issue, and in his eyes, for once, there was genuine pride. One summer evening, we gathered in the backyard for a small family barbecue. Nothing grand, just grilled meat salad and a few cold beers. No arguments, no tension. Michael chatted with Dad about projects at work. Mom listened with a smile, while Daniel and I prepared dessert. And in that moment, I realized after everything, my family had found a new rhythm. Not perfect, not glamorous, but peaceful. And from it all, I learned a lesson I will never forget. Financial boundaries are not just about numbers in a bank account. They are about respect. They are about freedom. They are the measure of whether love is real or distorted. Because love, when entangled with exploitation, becomes a chain. But with boundaries, love has room to exist in its purest form. I once thought unconditional giving was love. But now I know real love sometimes means saying no at the right moment so the other person is forced to stand on their own. If I had signed that so-called family fund agreement, I might have lost everything, my career, my love, even myself. But by daring to protect my boundaries, I not only saved myself, I saved my family from the endless cycle of dependency. Now, as I write these words, I no longer feel the choking pain of the past. My heart is calm. I look at Michael, at my parents, at Daniel, and I smile, because in the end, I finally learned happiness doesn't come from giving away everything. It comes from keeping enough for yourself so you can love freely and truly.